Hello, Allie.
Hello, Jason. Hi.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you. Very well.
Good. You're in a London lockdown, right?
Yes, I am. Oh, yes, we are. Yeah, me and my team in the London lockdown. Yes, definitely. Yeah.
Well, that's not good news, but you do have good news. You recently released a report. What did we learn in 2020? Got a bunch of
Yeah.
input from industry experts from around the globe. Tell us about that.
So throughout the whole of 2020, clearly we had the impact of COVID. We had various lockdown restrictions, and in the UK, certainly we had different. Once the first major lockdown had happened, we had different levels of tiers that were introduced. And so one city would go into tier one, another city would go into tier two, and then the first city would come out. And I just said to my revenue managers, surely there must be some kind of pattern with this or something we can take away to learn regarding how to manage what's happening in this very volatile situation, these situations that people are finding themselves in. And so we started to identify some trends. We put a blog together, and then I thought, I really want to get some input from all of the really good people that I can see are working really hard in their own regions as well. So we put the blog out, and then I posted on LinkedIn to say, guys, just here's our thoughts, but what are yours? And the response was terrific, like really, really brilliant. So then it became a journey to put together the report, which was great fun.
Yeah, you created a lot of work.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I didn't add that into the equation, but the response was so good. I felt it really was justified. So yeah.
Yeah, it's a good report. I'll put it in this post so everyone can find it if they don't
Thank you.
already have it. But first thing that caught my eye in the report was culture role changes, I think it was called,
Hmm.
and skills element was another. And so the question that comes to my mind, for most hotels, do you outsource? I mean, you probably lost a lot of people. You probably lost good people. What was the feedback that you got?
It was different feedback and on multiple levels. So I think the role in itself came under quite a lot of scrutiny. No demand, no customers, nothing to manage. That was a very simplistic view at the very beginning, and people really jumped on that.
Yeah.
And I think you had a lot of revenue managers that sadly, their role wasn't respected, and they were moved on. But there was a lot to do at the time. You always need to manage future reservations. There was the overwhelming scenario of cancellations, which was shocking, and some of the ways that was dealt with also was not so good. Um, but I think you have to be realistic now. So the industry has taken a far greater hit than we ever thought. It's on its knees. There is no money. And it's not only the revenue management role that's come under scrutiny. So, and actually, has had to evolve. And the outcome of that, I think, is you still need to have some level of revenue management practice within a hotel. And so that might mean that you can't have a revenue manager, but you have to do something. It's not like saying, I haven't got a revenue manager, therefore I'll just leave everything and hope that things will work out. I mean, hope is not a good revenue strategy. It never works. So I think there probably is a role in some cases for outsource, whereby, and certainly where you can have maybe as the buyer of that service, have some level of flexibility. So, for example, if you have a good reservations manager who has a great understanding of the environment, then you might just need a bit of a holding hand or some technology. So maybe being suppliers of those services, including myself, being more flexible in terms of really supporting hotels in the short term. I think longer term, those hotels that really have always had a very focused look at how they manage revenue management probably are okay. They still have the role. They've managed to find it in some other way to keep it going. But the skill set has had to change, definitely, from from perhaps just looking at systems and technology and taking it as read as to what that technology is telling you, to being more creative, more innovative as a revenue manager, finding ways to access demand that in places where you never dreamt that you'd be accessing demand from. So yeah, there's lots of different facets to how the role has changed.
Yeah, I keep hearing that the revenue manager is getting more and more involved in demand generation. So it's hard to imagine not having that function, whether you outsource it or keep it.
Yeah.
What about technology? You had a quote from Max Starkov, which is it's always good to get some input from Max. Love it. Something about the technology. Replacing the mundane task and whatnot. And from a technology company perspective, where I come from, it's an enabler. But where do you see technology right now and through 2021?
I think right now, a lot of the cleaning up of technology has been done. I think a lot of people have looked very, very critically, in a good way, at kind of what their technology is delivering to them. So it's, for example, just clean up of the digital environment and making sure that everything works, which actually is a first for some hotels, which is good. But I see now that those systems, certainly from a revenue management system perspective, that can manage the agility of short-term forecasting, delivering data that is of relevance and of value, that isn't technology that's not necessarily prescribed to really defined market segments, because segmentation is changing so much. We need to have that level of flexibility in terms of who we're looking at in terms of demand. So the technology that will win will be that technology which is able to respond to a market which is incredibly unpredictable. And from an RMS perspective, that should be the case, because that's in theory, because that's how RMSs work, to responding to those different scenarios. But certainly the tech stack has to be efficient, streamlined, and really deliver exactly on what hotels need right now.
You mentioned short-term forecasting. Like, is that really possible? What does that look like?
There are certain systems that actually sell themselves on short-term forecasting. I think there's a lot to be said for revenue managers that can actually identify and visualize demand really well, and actually support systems in terms of what they can do. But we've always had short, medium, and long-term forecasting. It's just that the short term suddenly has taken this huge rise to predominance. Certainly in this sort of managing where we are in COVID and moving out of that environment. It's difficult, but it's not to say that we haven't got the ability to do it. And we just need to be able to use different data sets. So we will be looking at different ways of demand generation. So looking at different ways to transfer that demand into actual opportunity, and then to convert it.
Give me a couple examples of the data sets you're speaking of.
So certainly different segments that are appearing, which perhaps would not have been thought about before. So, for example, people staying away from their cities because they don't want to go back because the situation is very difficult to manage, or maybe they want to look after people at home, but cannot stay with their parents, for example. We've got situations in the UK where you have families that are maybe have parental separation, where you want parents need to be able to see their children, but they can't visit in their own home, so they need to stay somewhere else. Key workers, obviously that's a key segment that everybody is aware of, but also office workers that perhaps need to have a strategy meeting, or be able to stay close to an office rather than being at home. So there's a lot more there's a lot more differentiation in market segmentation, a lot smaller, but really being able to identify that demand and translate that into bookings is key.
All right. Well, we are out of time, but thank you, Ali, for joining me.
My pleasure.
All right. Talk to you later. Bye.
Okay. Cheers. Thank you.